Dear Pakistan Cardiac Society and all the participants for this webinar on COVID-19 and financial burden, psychological health impact on women in developing countries in South Asia. My name is Dr. Jack Tan from Singapore, and I would like again to thank my good friend, Professor Khalida Sumro, and my colleagues at the Pakistan Cardiac Society for putting out this very important webinar addressing the needs, often neglected needs, financially and psychological needs of people, and especially women within this South Asian region. If you may, I would just like to share a few slides of mine addressing this issue. Again, it's a great effort, and I'm sorry I couldn't join the webinar in person because it's conflicting APSC Club webinar on heart failure, which I'm chairing. So again, thank you very much for allowing me this chance to present a few slides. My name is Jack. I'm currently the president of the Asian Pacific Society of Cardiology. I'm an interventional cardiology, also practicing intensive care. A quick slide on where we are in COVID-19. So this is a classic slide of what happens at the health footprint whenever a pandemic hits the country. So I think for most countries, we're past the first and probably second wave 7 months into COVID-19 onset. So the first wave is when we have immediate impact on mortality and mobility when COVID-19 hits us, and we're swamped by our healthcare infrastructure and needs. The second wave that you might see is the impact on resources for non-urgent conditions. So it's not just cardiac, this so-called disappearing ACS wave that we're hitting us. It's things like appendicitis, not having a bed to come in, COPD not well treated, cancer treatment delay. And this is overlapped with the first wave or the post-ICU recovery tail end of the first wave hit. And what I'm afraid of is the collateral damage when we move into this phase, then seeing in a lot of countries, especially developing countries, when there's an impact of interrupted care in non-communicable disease conditions, particularly diabetes, hypertension, lack of access to screening, as well as to treatment due to scarcity of resources and medication. So I think this is going to prove to be a huge impact as we move down into the x-axis of time further down. We may see a greater wave of conditions coming out when it manifests as strokes, heart attacks, uncontrolled diabetes or hypertension. But today's seminar, I think we want to address the fourth wave, which is as we move on, when things get a bit long, dragged out, we don't see really the light at the end of the tunnel. The psychiatric trauma and mental stress that I'm sure everyone is feeling, the economic damage that has happened in most developing and developed countries, and the burnout that physicians on top of patients are feeling. So in conclusion, I think we should think of this as both challenges as well as opportunities. I, in my position as president of APSC, is very fearful of the collateral damage that COVID-19 has caused in our cardiac patients. We need to evolve ways of care model that caters to the need for both screening for new undetected non-communicable diseases like diabetes and hypertension. We need to offer access to care, and we need to treat the diseases as they come without being overemphasizing on the challenges of COVID-19. We all also need to pay more attention in addressing the psychological and financial browning in this stage to burnout. So I think we need to provide more emotional support, not just to our patients, but really to our staff and colleagues. And I would say the opportunity or the silver lining here is that maybe in my country where we are very invested into the traditional model of care, it's very difficult to move out to a new model of care. But for developing nations like Pakistan, you do have the opportunity to leapfrog and evolve a new model of care that can employ probably technology, remote care, mail order access to medications. So I think we all need to do better in these trying times, and we do need to do better for not just our ladies, our patients, but everyone in Asia Pacific. So with that, I like to thank the participants and the faculty for spending their afternoon for this webinar. And I hope everyone benefits from this endeavor. Thank you very much, and keep safe.
Thank you, Dr. Dick. Okay. Now I will invite Dr. Babar Harun to give his message on this occasion and introduce our chairperson.
Yes, good morning, and I welcome all my guests, all the international speakers, the panelists, and the chairman on this occasion of psychosocial impact of COVID-19 on women, especially all over the world. And we hope we will learn from all these valuable and honorable speakers.
All right, now I'll request Dr. Uneza to take up the session to introduce the speakers and allow them to present the presentations. Over to you, Dr. Uneza.
A very good morning from Karachi, Pakistan. I'm honored to moderate this first webinar of Asia Pacific Cardiology Society in collaboration with the Pakistan Cardiology Society. I would like especially to thank Professor Khawda Sumro, the chairperson of Scientific Council of Women with Heart Disease, the Pakistan Psychiatric Society. Ladies and gentlemen, South Pacific, as you probably know anyway, generally includes Asia, East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Oceania. And that's a very large area. The region is said to be the key engine for global economy. And its 21 economies have a combined GDP of $36 million, which is about 56% of the world economic output. Talking about all these issues is extremely important, and women's potential fully and equally with men will promote sustainable, balanced, inclusive growth and will improve the representation of women with institutions and intergenerational development outcomes. And it also will be crisis cushioning. Now, dear colleagues, our civilization is probably passing through a very critical juncture in this millennium. Our existence is being challenged by the emergence of a novel, severe, acute respiratory syndrome, which is coronavirus, and it continues encroaching newer territories all over the world. And these responses are now recognized as a natural psychological responses like anxiety, awareness of this virus all the time, and the phobia we have of virus, and the distress. And it, of course, changes the living conditions of all our societies. So quite rightly, this topic was is going to be very useful for the audience. Now, the adverse psychosomatic outcomes among people are nevertheless expected to increase significantly due to the pandemic itself, but also, unfortunately, due to the available information and reinforced messaging obtained on online social networking services of almost all forms. The media, the TV, radio, anyway is going, but the WhatsApp, etc., is messing us up. Consequently, rapidly expanding mass hysteria and panic regarding COVID may result in enduring psychological problems in public from all socio-economic domains. And of course, as you know, 2/3 of the women suffer from psychiatric problems. So all the psychiatric problems, again, in this particular case, women will be really very much the victims, and which could even be more detrimental in the long run than the virus itself. In the past studies, it's been said that such pandemics anyway bring all these psychological symptoms with them, but we haven't kind of really had studies to find the impact on mental health. I think if you look at the impact which is caused by this coronavirus, number one, as I said, mass hysteria, economic burden, and of course, financial losses also. Economic burden because, staying at home and not having enough income is obviously affecting the people, especially women, and then financial losses because so many people who have rented places or who have small business are not allowed to work. And the mass fear of COVID is now well known and is called coronophobia, and it's generated excess of psychiatric manifestations across different strata of the society. Now, what can this psychosocial impact do? It can produce acute panic, anxiety, obsessive behaviors, hoarding food. We're not worrying that, next day we may not get enough food, so people are hoarding food. Paranoia, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, etc. in the long run. Then outbursts of racism, and this has happened in UK, for instance, not now, we haven't heard so much in our part of the world, that they were said that the blacks or the dark-skinned people have more of these, more affected by coronavirus. So there was this stigmatization, there was this racist attitude towards them. Then xenophobia against particular communities has also been reported in the past. Now, cardiovascular diseases, which include stroke, claim life of a woman every 80 seconds. I think you all cardiologists, as you know. And heart disease and stroke cause 1 in 3 deaths among women each year, more than all cancers. But of course, we know that about 80% of these cardiovascular diseases can be prevented by education and proper action. The relationship of our emotions and psyche to heart disease is indeed very intriguing. Several reviews and review articles show that the evidence linking cardiovascular and neuropsychiatric disorders and the possible mechanisms and pathophysiology is there in this association. For example, type A personality, which has a lot of anger, hostility, even cynicism and mistrust, is one of the precursor for causing these conditions. Then depression caused by all the stress, etc., phobic anxiety, acute mental stress, etc., all affect the behavior and affect the stressful experiences of women, and in turn affect the heart problem, lead to heart problems. Conversely, cardiac activity and function can reach conscious awareness and may be experienced as symptoms. You see, quite often physicians attribute somatic symptoms like fatigue, lethargy, insomnia, and loss of appetite to underlying physical conditions and medications. But they may also lack of confidence in physicians to treat patients with psychotropic drugs for these anxiety symptoms or the depression, etc., because of the existing cardiovascular conditions. But there are so many medications available now, psychotropic medications, which are not cardiotoxic. So these can be given. Depressive disorders, as you know, like any other psychiatric illness, are 2 or 3 times more in women. And so with these conditions, the economic crisis, depression, and pre-existing cardiovascular symptoms, there'll be 2 to 3 times sufferers. Women will be sufferers. I'm not going to repeat the objectives of the seminar, but I just wanted to say that the pandemic of COVID continues to spread, and it is necessary. I mean, luckily at the moment in Pakistan, it's not so bad. The death rate has gone down, but in other countries, it is continuing to spread, and they say there is going to be a second wave. So the outbreak, for this outbreak, the governments, both at federal and provincial level, must respond to the immediate and intermediate needs of women and children. It is critical for countries to have plans in place to achieve prescribed standards and quality in provision of services in a manner that is responsive to women and children, women and especially child-friendly. To address public health gaps have been put in place in many countries, including Pakistan, to mitigate the impact of COVID. And it is crucial that all national responses have women's inclusion, representation, rights, social and economic outcomes, equality and protection at the center to have necessary
Dr. Everybody is getting late now. Their lectures are.
Yeah. So I just want.
Can we start with the speakers?
I just wanted to end by saying that lots of very important presentations are waiting. We have 3 very well-known international speakers, and I would like to welcome Gemma Figri. She's a professor in medicine at the University of Sydney. She co-leads the cardiovascular team for Sydney Health Partners and a NHMRC Advanced Health Research and Translational Center. And she is the chair of the University of Sydney Multidisciplinary Cardiovascular Initiative. She has several awards, but I'd just like to mention a few. She has the University of Sydney Faculty Medicine and Health Award for Excellence. She has an Outstanding Research Leadership Award in 2019. She got it in 2019. Then also Ministerial Award for Cardiovascular Research Excellence in 2019. She has a long-standing interest and commitment to cardiovascular research, which began at the National Heart and Lung Institute in London in 1997. She also has a PhD in cardiovascular genetics and molecular biology from the Oxford University. I'd like to now request Dr. Gemma Figri to please give a presentation. Dr. Gemma.
Thank you so much, and good morning to everyone over there, and good afternoon to those of you who are in our time zone. Thank you very much for including Australia in this important area of discussion, and obviously we're very keen to be approaching these issues as an international team. So thank you for that kind introduction. I'm going to see if I can master technology. So this is my home here in Sydney. I work at Royal North Shore Hospital as an interventional cardiologist as well as a researcher. And we have a long-standing kind of bench to bedside research program. So as well as that, I'm a mother of 2 young boys, and I love that part of my life as well. So lots to do. And look, obviously we're in a situation where we have a global burden of disease that is not just the infection, as we've heard. I think this obviously demonstrates here the current situation globally as of this morning, according to the World Health Organization, with 18,142,718 cases globally. This is the Australian number of, this is the Australian number. So obviously we're in quite a different situation down here, but it's actually still having an impact in a different kind of, in a way that's actually really important because of the financial stress on the country due to lockdowns, etc. And as I'll explain, we're actually in the process of our second wave at the moment. This is the situation. We were feeling pretty, I would say, there's an Australian slang term of kind of cocky or confident, and this is what happened recently in Victoria. So it's predominantly a situation in one state, but it's led to the shutdown again of much of Victoria, and now having impact on the rest of the country. Yes. Hello? Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead, Gemma. Can hear you well.
Terrific. So obviously this is putting pressure not just on the health system, but on individuals in terms of finance and economics. And interestingly, that is also the healthcare workers themselves who are obviously not short on work, although some of those healthcare workers who work in elective settings for people with chronic disease are actually seeing less work. And a recent survey found that 52% of Australian healthcare workers are very worried about their finances. And obviously financial stress and other socioeconomic stress can lead to poor mental health and also to chronic illness, as we've heard. This is an article from the Sydney Morning Herald, actually just a couple of days ago, demonstrating that the impact of financial stress is actually disproportionate for younger women. And this is potentially due to the fact that they're more likely to be in less secure jobs, I think, as well as, I guess, the kind of stage of their life that they're at. This Australian longitudinal study of women's health surveyed 8,600 women across 3 different age groups and confirmed that it's the 25 to 31-year-olds that are actually feeling the very or extremely stressed. And in fact, the older generation were taking it in their stride and really feeling a little bit more confident from a financial and a social perspective. Now, across the globe, gender inequalities, as we've heard, is contributing to actually our underperformance on a financial level. On a per capita basis, gender inequality in earnings could lead to losses in wealth of $23,620 per person. And this is a report from the World Bank. And so this actually, in total, leads to $160 trillion in wealth loss because of the differences in lifetime earnings between women and men. So trying to get equitable approaches to that's actually going to have benefits on the global economy. Now, the pandemic also throws a spotlight on other dimensions of inequality. There could be a gendered impact of women typically compromised in terms of health and social care workers. They're more exposed to infection in that job, as well as other professions where they're on the front line. Interestingly, they're also most often the ones that are having to cope with kids needing homeschooling. And in countries where there's diverse range of wealth and particularly poverty, the digital divide where some children who are trying to be homeschooled don't have as much access to digital educational tools is a real problem. And so this is actually putting an enormous burden on women. And obviously those on the front line are often really struggling. And this is from the Jakarta Post, where I mind at the same time due to the financial difficulties of the country. There's been reports of increase in domestic violence, which also obviously causes mental stress and has long-term health impacts. And we know that to people that you can trust, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and also keeping a good diet and sleep routine are really important at the front line when people are under this type of stress. That's all I've got now, so I might stop sharing and be happy to take questions now or later.
Thank you very much, Professor Gemma Figri. It was a very erudite presentation. Lovely to see your kids also. And I understand the other gentleman was your husband. Was he? Yeah?
I don't know which gentleman. It might have been me.
Yeah, okay.
Oh no, that was Steve Vernon, who's actually a PhD student and a clinical fellow.
Okay, okay. Well, now I have the pleasure to introduce Professor Yusra Turkestani, and she is an assistant professor in the internal medicine department at the College of Medicine, Al Qura University, and an adult cardiologist at King Abdullah Medical City in the Holy Capital. She is an American-Canadian board She has an American-Canadian board in internal medicine, cardiology, and echocardiography. She's an active member in Saudi Heart Association, and she was the chair of the Echo Scientific Committee in Saudi Heart Annual Conference in 2019. So already she's very active. She's an active member of Saudi Heart Association and was the chair of the Echo. She's already been chair in several conferences, and she has represented the society in several international meetings, and she's a Heart Image of Tomorrow ambassador of Saudi Arabia since 2019. Dr. Yusra Turkestani, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Niaz. Thank you. I would like to thank the Asia Pacific Cardiac Society as well as the Pakistan Society for giving me a chance to be in this great, unique webinars talking about us as a woman and in this difficult time of COVID pandemics. And just share my, allow me if I can share my slides. Okay, I hope everybody can see that. And my name is Yusra. I'm a mother physician of 3 young kids. And I'm an early to mid career in my mid career of cardiology. And I hope that you can benefit of my humble thoughts and experience of what it means to be a mother physician and a fellow human being during this pandemic. This is my small family. So I thought I would just go with a little bit of a background. I always remind myself, and people around me remind me, that being a mother physician in the field, such as the dynamic and demanding field of cardiology, is itself, it's a big achievement. And doing that achievement, you're spontaneously a role model for many young, ambitious female medical students and residents who love to have a cardiology, pursue a cardiology as a career, but they're always reluctant as they don't want to give up the family and having kids side of the view. And I always tell them, being a female cardiologist, we face a lot of challenges that we cannot deny, but it takes a lot of courage, determination, resilience, trying to balance, or rather integrate both sides of lives, but it's not impossible. So let's talk about being a mother cardiologist pre-pandemic. We all have these challenges that there is a difference that we cannot deny being a woman in the cardiology fields. And if we look at the statistics, which I'm going to use the US statistic as the most recent I can grab, and we can gauge on them. In the US, only 38% of the cardiologists are women. And less cardiologists, female cardiologists, are mother when you compare it to a male cardiologist who are fathers. And female cardiologists need a lot of child time, especially female mother cardiologists need a lot of full-time child care supports compared to the fathers. They spend 3 times the amount of times in the household activities. And we cannot deny that having a career in cardiology often impact your family planning and pregnancy, and vice versa. We tend to avoid or minimize radiation exposures when we're pregnant and we were planning pregnancy, and that's some of the reason that women tend to shy away from the procedural branches of cardiology. We use part-time work to compensate for things that when our family needs us. And these are some of the reasons that we earn less money than our male counterparts. We are a little bit slower to achieve academically, and unfortunately we get less leadership roles, and we get higher burnout rate. But remember that it's doable. It's not undoable. And we have a lot of figures of successful mothers, cardiologists in the field. And when you talk to them, they all tell you that it requires few things. One of the most important things, that you establish your support village, most importantly, your spouse, your family members, your relatives, your babysitters, your paid they can do something for you, like help you with your household activity. It needs a lot of delegations of non-essential works. Efficient time management is really important, as well as setting appropriate expectation. Mentoring and social networking is very important. And if you can manage to bring these things together, I think you can have an integration that is a little bit successful, rather than talking about balancing being a female cardiologist and motherhood. You need to integrate all these aspects in your life to be successful. But not only with the challenges that we faced during before the pandemics, here comes the pandemics, and it put a lot of pressures on us as a mother physicians. Not only us, it's all over the world, and every single person's in this world. But I'm going to talk about the challenges we face. We are dealing with a novel virus, and that itself gives a lot of confusion and uncertainties. And what are we dealing with? How are we dealing with? In the beginning of the times, we are reading, we constantly reading news, hearing news and reading about every single articles that comes out, and how do we treat it, what the different outcomes, and what are the mortality rates. There is a lot of uncertainty. We go to works that we bring back our home. Here comes the lockdowns, and with a lot of social, with the stresses it brings to the whole community, from the elderly person to the smallest person or the youngest person in your household. Travel restrictions that not only affecting our achievements and being active and going into conferences and social networkings, but affected me personally on my household. My nanny went to vacations, but they got stuck out and couldn't come back. So I suffered from that travel restriction that way. School and daycare closure, put household work here as a physician. So you want to keep your house tidy, clean, disinfected, and add on top of that homeschooling and keeping your kids busy and entertained, as well as cooking, grocery shopping. That means it's already doubling the double work that you used to have as a female mother physician, not to add the financial downturn, which not affected us as a healthcare workers or doctors as much as the other people, but it affected everyone around. It affected people around us, and some people who are not in different healthcare models may be affected, depending, as the Dr. Factory said, people who are relying on the outpatients in the private sectors or procedures, they are affected economically as well. Going to work, we are used to work in stressful situations, but this novel virus added more to that stress, and we are seeing sicker patients, anxiety, longer works. That itself brings more pressure on us as a female, as a mother physicians. But not only that, coming back from works with more fear and worry. Am I getting infected from the virus? Am I bringing the virus back home and infecting my beloved one? What am I gonna do? I'm just gonna take off that moment, I'm just gonna play this video. The moment when you cannot hold your babies and then hold them and give them a kiss and hugs and run to you at home, through the door, before you do your ritual of decontamination, I think it's exhausting physically and mentally. But the things I wanted to send through this webinar is to all the female mothers, all the mother physicians. You are not alone. It's affecting everybody. And it's our job as the healthcare workers, as a doctors, as a woman in the field, to pat on each other shoulders and tell us that we can do it. Yes, we can do it. Remember, you are a hero. Not only you are a hero on the eyes of your babies or your kids, your family, you're a hero in the eyes of our community. Did a lot, just appreciating our village that you had, depending on whatever you had. I was lucky enough, or should say unlucky, that my husband was one of the people who were affected financially with his job being limited. He had to do a home, he had to work from home, but it was to our benefits that he stayed more with the kids, and I have that support. Work schedules, different countries had by the individuals. For example, I can talk about the model that we had in my centers, that we worked half staffs, and all the of course all the elective procedures has been canceled, that allow us to do more telehealth in clinics and manage people through telehealth. And we allowed 50% working loads, working staff, so it allows give me some week off and week on with my kids to catch up with the things that I need to do with them. Involve your kids and have more quality time. Don't think about the quantity time. The people, the kids, they already know that you're a superhero, and people around you, they are supporting you. Here, so the kids of my kids are helping me with vacuuming. We clean together, we cook together, and when we have enough times, we play together, we draw, and we do makeups and role playing. Prioritize is very important. Put your to-do list and rearrange those important stuff, the less important stuff that you can get rid of your to-do list. And time management is important. Bring out your mother calendars, plan your day by minutes, and believe me, if you plan ahead, you will.
Assalamu alaikum. Now I'd like to introduce Nanette Ray.
Very much for that kind introduction. And I would say one another despite the current pandemic. So for the greater majority of the working population, doctors included. As panic buying set in, we saw the healthcare workers having an extreme shortage of PPEs, further limiting the capacity to work, which translated to a further reduction of daily income. Yet, there were some advantages that the pandemic and the lockdown brought us, doctors and some professionals. It became an opportunity to have that unplanned but long-deserved vacation. Subsequently, working from home for doctors became an option as telemedicine became more widely used, hence allowing for less stresses from daily hospital work and less hospital work-related expenses, as you don't need to use as much makeup, you don't need to dress as fancy, as this became the usual attire when you work from home, and income is somehow augmented a little with the telemedicine. Sorry. Okay. On the social aspect, gatherings were restricted, physical distancing was strictly imposed, and people were mandated to stay home. Hence, there is a feeling of isolation. Clinics were empty because of the general fear of hospitals, hence less patients and less doctors were available for face-to-face consultations. Elbow bumps became the norm for greetings instead of the usual hugs and kisses. Yet there were some advantages also, as social media became an avenue for many to keep connected, despite the distance, and therefore alleviated the feeling of isolation. As it now became an indefinite vacation, it became an opportunity for many to engage in pastimes such as K-dramas, which is very popular in the Philippines. There was likewise a lot of opportunities for virtual learnings as webinars were conducted and became the main avenue for learning through conferences and meetings. As for the family, some disadvantages included less physical interaction because of physical distancing to avoid possibly contracting and spreading the disease among our family members, especially after coming from the hospital. And since most members of the family are staying at home and are working from home, this translated to increased home expenses at a time when there is reduced income. Yet, there are a lot of advantages also, as it became an opportunity for many to spend more quality time with the family, allowing for more family meals, more conversations, more time for recreation, and generally more bonding opportunities, which we all know is one of the things we doctors have difficulty because a doctor's job is one of the most demanding and takes a lot of our time away from our family. On a personal aspect, there is loss of travel opportunities and learning opportunities for many physicians because we fail now to attend a lot of international conferences. But more than that is the sense of loss of control with ensuing anxiety and sometimes depression, plus a genuine fear for your own frailty as the disease continued to claim the lives of family, friends, mentors, and colleagues. In less than a month since it was declared a pandemic, 10 doctors in the Philippines were afflicted and died, and more have perished since then. And until now, there are several doctors who are in critical condition here in the Philippines. Hence, there is a genuine fear for each doctor that the next patient could be me. Despite all this, it became a time where there is abundance of kindness, compassion, and empathy. It allowed more me time, and for many, all the desperation brought about by the pandemic became a time to renew one's spirituality, to gain strength and courage at this time when many have lost so many, and where we continue to pray for our own safety. What about the rest of the world? Everyone is reeling from the losses brought about by the pandemic. Economic losses, lost jobs, as many have shut down after the lockdown and could not sustain operations, and such subsequently led to anger, anxiety, sadness, depression, and social unrest. Many have taken to social media to lash out and to express their anger and desperation. Yet, the pandemic, devastating as it was, brought about some beauty with it. For a while, the world became more quiet, with less crimes and less pollution, and somehow, amidst all of this desperation, there is a sense of optimism that one day this will all end as we work together to fight this pandemic. This is Manila before the pandemic. Within 2 weeks after the pandemic and the community lockdown, this is Manila. And you can see that what was previously obscured by the smog and pollution was actually a beautiful mountain range. We never knew there was one. Henceforth, for every ugly thing that happens, something beautiful may come out of it, depending on how one reacts to every negative thing that happens. With this feeling of desperation, I say it's okay to not be okay all the time. What is important is to continue with the optimism that all this will soon come to pass. Be productive, eat healthy, exercise, sleep early, enjoy time with your family, enjoy the family meals, the conversations, pick up that book you've been wanting to read, binge on Netflix, experiment on TikTok, or whatever your favorite pastime is. Eat that chocolate, savor that wine you have been keeping for so long. Observe physical distancing. Isolate yourself, but don't be isolated. Continue to connect. Talk to someone. Technology has allowed us to remain connected to make us safe. This is what makes us truly human. To know that we are vulnerable and to accept that vulnerability because that is what makes us stronger. One day, this will come to pass, and one day, we will all look back to it and be thankful that somehow we have become stronger. We have conquered the disease by learning more about it and how to combat the pandemic. And in the midst of all this chaos, we have somehow survived it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nanette. It was a very positive lecture, which ended positively. And yes, there is always hope. There's always a silver lining in the cloud. And this this particular webinar was very, very interesting because speakers gave glimpses of economic and psychosocial impact in their countries. And I think the choice of speakers was really good, which was made by, I suppose, Dr. Khalida Sumro, because one was, Gemma gave a very erudite scientific presentation, and Yusra gave this wonderful woman, family, and a high professional's life. And you talked of the world, everything about life, and you've been everywhere. And I think it's a very interesting thing which you talked about, the spirituality, the time to be with the family. And I think if anything we have learned from this COVID are 2-3 things, that spirituality and faith definitely has been strengthened. One accepts simple things in life like home-cooked food, family conversations, learning about ancestors from parents, their experiences, jokes and humor. So it's been really, really a good time. So let's look forward to the end of this COVID, hopefully, and the vaccine comes out, and also to relish this period of time where we are forced to think, sit back and contemplate about life. Now I would like to hand over to Dr. Rifat Sultana. She's the coordinator of the Karachi chapter of Pakistan Cardiology Society. Over to you, Dr. Rifat Sultana.
Thank you so much. Such a nice presentation, such a nice webinar on women. Can you hear me? Hear me?
Yes, we can. I can hear you.
Okay. First of all, I request Professor Gaba Fikri. Ma'am, we have a question for you. Okay, ma'am, please share us your experience how depression is a strong predictor for the coronary artery disease among the female patients, the female individuals.
Absolutely. I think the evidence is strong that obviously anxiety and depression, when formally diagnosed, associates with coronary disease in males and females. In our experience, obviously in the younger women that is actually augmented, and I think that's probably reflecting the lower number of traditional risk factors in those individuals. But part of the trick is that it's really difficult to truly put the finger on and quantify, and I think that's why with the progress in understanding immune and measuring response at a molecular level, we hope to actually be able to understand how depression, the actual mechanisms that can be measured in a blood marker, how depression and anxiety is actually mediating atherosclerosis. If we could measure that, it would actually really help us target prevention and also optimize health of patients with these conditions. But I mean, I guess the answer to your question is there is no doubt that it plays a role. It's just very difficult to understand how to modify not only the way you treat patients' stress and anxiety and depression, but also how do you optimize their cardiovascular risk status once you know that they're at heightened risk because of their psychological.
The story about how it is for the mother, and I thought that the video that Dr. Yosra showed, was trying to figure out how to, whether not to mess up the pronunciation. I hope I got it correct. About the mother having to juggle, and that particular video that you show at the end of the father coming home. So I want to say that my thoughts are that I think we are in this together as a father and as a cardiologist. I kind of empathize with that video. So when I had to cover the isolation wards, I wore a scrub to work. When I entered the elevator at my home, in my apartment block, I saw a few people walk the opposite direction and they didn't want to come in. When I came home, I couldn't hug the kids. So I feel that too. But I think that this is particularly difficult for the mothers the women in our community. So I want to congratulate all of you for for doing what you're doing and to keep it up. So I think this is a very valuable seminar for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now I request Professor Abdullah Sahab. Sir, please could you share your experience regarding the Arabian woman cardiovascular status during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I think it was great to be with you and learn a lot, actually, to see our colleagues, female colleagues are the leaders and really make us, led by example. Here we saw three great examples of the cardiologist and leading in this pandemic time. I think as COVID-19 affected everyone at different phases. The opportunities, I think, and the challenges we faced and globally, I think we used to think about any problems in the past is away from us, but this one has actually affected all of us as a family, from the children to the grandfather and grandmother. I think every one of us, maybe his friend or his mother or sister, been lost during this time. But I think the good news, the positive, has been more than negative, as all of you agreed. And I think the effect of as you said, the stress has been at many levels, at the physical, emotional, economical, social. But we managed to adapt ourselves. And I think maybe in Dubai, all of us expected to have Expo 2020, which is one of the major things happen in all the world. This was postponed to next year, and we managed to adapt ourselves. I think in UAE, for example, and in the Middle East, at least I can speak, we managed to, able to test as much as possible, adapt to ourselves to manage this COVID in the right way. And I think, this problem is as you said, many waves is there. It's prediction. We don't know. I mean, I think the positive is more than negative, and I hope we will see the lots of experience and hopes from this pandemic, COVID-19. And really, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. I am moving towards Professor Zainab Samad. Ma'am, kindly share your experience about the impact of depression and the cardiovascular problems among the Pakistani females.
Thank you, Dr. Rifat Sultana, and it's so wonderful to actually be part of this very excellent panelist group. What I actually want to share is a few thoughts around what COVID-19 is probably meant for Pakistani females in general. Now, according to the last DHS survey that was done a couple of years ago, we obviously rank very low on the female and women empowerment index in the world. But one statistic really stood out for me, and that was that 43% of married women actually participate in all three decisions in their household. And those three decisions are that they participate as to how and when they get healthcare, where they should get major household purchases, and whether they can visit their family or not. Now, these are really important decisions that have to do with them, their empowerment, and them be able to take care of their families. And I feel like this has not been studied well. COVID-19 has probably exacerbated that issue, and that needs to be studied. This comes out in variety of different ways. So a woman cannot actually be empowered to seek healthcare for herself or even for her younger family members, like her children. That then leads to poorer outcomes for herself and her kids too. And so only 50% of women, according to the last NCT survey in Pakistan, were actually physically active as per the WHO guidelines. And so one can only imagine that this has gotten worse. So I feel like we've created sort of an ingredient pot for an NCD surge after this, after the COVID-19 surge. And that's something that all cardiologists need to be aware of. Clearly, the psychosocial factors are deeply intertwined and connected with the healthcare seeking behaviors and the health of women. And we as cardiologists really need to be cognizant of that, and perhaps be doing more in terms of reaching to the community rather than waiting for the women to show up in our clinics and hospitals to take care of them. Thank you very much for organizing this seminar. It was really quite a pleasure to listen to Dr. Fikri, Dr. Turkestani, and Dr. Ray. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more question from our participants. Dr. Zainab, please tell us what psychological
of what might come down the pipeline following COVID-19. So I feel like academic medical centers need to be cognizant of how they're going to deal with COVID-19. Our patient community is going to be affected. I think the way we deliver care is going to be is going to just make a rapid change. I think there'll be less in terms of hospital care and more in terms of community care, and more use of teleservices, even for populations where the digital services may not exist. So these are the changes I foresee coming down the pipeline, and I feel like women especially are a vulnerable subset, because especially in countries like Pakistan and South Asia, they suffer from a digital prejudice, I would say, where a large portions, even if they own a phone, it's not owned by them, it's actually owned by a male member of the family. And so those are kinds of the things that need to be cognizant of as physicians, and trying to reach that patient community.
Thank you so much. Here we are going to end today's session. Now we are moving toward the vote of thanks. And I am Dr. Rifa Sultana, Associate Professor of Karachi Institute of Heart Disease and Karachi Chapter Coordinator of Pakistan Cardiac Society, and active member of the Go Red for Women. It's a great privilege for me to be part of this symposium series of webinar of Pakistani Cardiac Society and Go Red for Women in collaboration with Asian Pacific Society of Cardiology. On behalf of Pakistan Cardiac Society and Go Red for Women, I would like to thank to all the respectable speakers, panel of experts, organizers, and to all the participants. A special thanks for the President of Pakistan Cardiac Society, Professor Harun Babar, and General Secretary of Professor Ishtiaq Rasool. He always support us for every kind of educational health activities. We are thankful to whole Asia Pacific Society of Cardiology. Thanks to the GATS Pharma to help us to organize this high-level educational activity. At the end, I especially congratulate Professor Khalda Somro to arrange such a fruitful, knowledgeable webinar on women health problems. Her effort towards the Pakistani women health, especially with the cardiovascular problems, are highly appreciable. Thank you so much.